Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for successful youth engagement and partnership on the Iditarod National Historic Trail. My name is Kara. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the program coordinator at the Partnership for the National Trail System, or PNTS. I will be serving as today's webinar moderator. I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Onondaga and Haudenosaunee people. PNTS recognizes that land acknowledgements are an important first step to acknowledge that we are on stolen Indigenous lands. I've provided a link in the chat where you can explore what native lands you currently reside on. Please also enter into the chat where you're joining us from, introduce yourself, and let us know what organization you're affiliated with. And as folks do that, we will get started. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Partnership for the National Trail System, PNTS is a small nonprofit that is a collective voice, a resource provider, a hub for exchange, learning, and action for the National Trail System. As the only 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on the 30 national scenic and historic trails, PNTS brings together professionals, leaders, and trail and hiking enthusiasts to promote a thriving, accessible, and inclusive national trail system. PNTS is proud to present today's webinar, Successful Youth Engagement and Partnership on the Iditarod National Historic Trail. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to everyone that registered following the live presentation. The session today will go for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A with the presenters. As we go, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put those into the chat. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Judy Bittner with the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, Delia Clark, a consultant for the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, Annette Heckart with U.S. Forest Service, and Louisa Wolfline with BLM Campbell Creek Science Center. And now I'll hand it off to Judy to get us started.
Welcome to the session on the Iditarod National Historic Trails Place-Based Service Learning Program, iTREC, Iditarod Trail to Every Classroom. The Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance and its partners with the Chugach National Forest, the Bureau of Land Management, and our place-based education consultant, Delia Clark, will be sharing with you information about our education program, iTREC, what it is, its challenges, and its successes. It is a story of collaboration and sharing. iTREC is based on the Appalachian Trail to Every Classroom program at its 2009 PNTS February meeting in Washington, D.C. Pam Underhill, Appalachian Trails Park Manager, talked about the Trail to Every Classroom in her agency report. And Jamie Schmidt and I attended that meeting and were intrigued with TREC. And Rita Hennessy was also at that meeting. And Annette, you might want to advance the slide there. And one again. It was Appalachian Trail to Every Classroom, was a professional development program for teachers from Georgia to Maine to engage youth through formal service learning curriculum-based activities. It was based on Rita Hennessy's master's project, which was a professional educator training and place-based service learning concepts. Jamie and I met with Pam Underhill and Rita Hennessy at Harper's Ferry following the PNTS meeting to explore the idea of collaboration and starting a similar program in Alaska. The AT agreed to work with the Iditarod National Historic Trail, and Jamie thought of it as bookending the country. The AT on the East Coast and the Iditarod Trail in the far west and north. Jamie saw the potential of a tech program in Alaska. And as you know, she is very persuasive and lends an abundance of energy to any project she takes on. Critical to the success of making it happen was Chugach National Forest Supervisor Joe Mead. Joe actively promoted cooperative projects amongst state and federal agencies, local communities, and nonprofit partners. He encouraged his staff and the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance to pursue the idea of establishing a Trail to Every Classroom program in Alaska using the Iditarod National Historic Trail. Joe went on to head up the Forest Service's Partnership Office in Washington, D.C. Rita generously shared all her tech materials and secured a National Park Service Challenge Cost Share grant for the initial iTREC training and entered into a cooperative agreement with the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance. For the first year of iTREC, the cooperative agreement covered travel for Rita, facilitator Delia Clark, and a teacher who had participated in the tech program. The cooperative agreement objectives for the iTREC were foster community awareness of and personal connection to the Iditarod, connect rural and urban communities along the Iditarod Trail, engage youth and communities in active outdoor experiences, and build lifelong stewards of Alaska public lands, natural resources, and cultural heritage. The iTREC program is a year-long professional development training for educators, and it consists of 3 workshops in 3 communities along the Iditarod Trail, Anchorage, Seward, and Nome, and one can earn 6 graduate credits from the University of Alaska. The core partnership established at the beginning is still going strong 11 years later. The Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, the nonprofit organization, Chugach National Forest, the coordinator for iTREC, the Bureau of Land Management and its program at Campbell Creek Science Center, and place-based education specialist consultant Delia Clark. The BLM and the Forest Service provide financial support to the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance for the iTREC program. And during the 11 years, there have been 8 years of the year-long 3-workshop model, 1 year of an alumni workshop, and 2 years of a series of webinars during the school year as a COVID adaptation. And now I'm going to hand this over to Delia Clark, who will tell us more about iTREC.
Great, thank you very much. And let me just, I'm hoping that I'll be able to click my screen here. So I wanted to talk about the idea of the, and maybe you can click for me, Annette, to get it going. Thanks. Great. The idea that came to all of us as we were thinking about this was to answer a few key questions. How might we inspire and nurture a passion for trails in youth? We were trying to create lifelong volunteers. We were trying to create kids who had a sense of what mattered to them and their place. And we were trying to create kids with a passion for learning and making the world a better place. So we asked ourselves that. We asked ourselves, it's still not, okay, here we go. How we could connect kids to place, especially such a vast place as Alaska. And how we could educate the next generation of trail users, stewards, and advocates to try to raise the rising generation of youth who knew how to manage. And I'm just going to have you click for me because I'm doing it and it's not happening. So thank you very much. I'm ready. So the answer that came to us was we looked at 2 different existing powerful models. One is place-based education. Place-based education is education that's grounded in the particular attributes of a place. Its values, its culture, its geography, everything that makes a place special. It gets kids out learning about their community. It brings community resources into the school, including parents and local experts, and it has kids doing specific learning projects that connect to their education that help them learn more about the place. And then we looked at the service learning model. Service learning gives students an opportunity to design and carry out a service project that meets the educational objectives of the school. So they're not just going out and maybe picking up litter or working in a soup kitchen one day. They're doing a service project that's meaningful in terms of whether it's math skills or how to write a letter or whatever the skills are. They're learning what they really need to know. And for the next slide, we pulled those things together in and created iTREC. So iTREC is, we use the model of place-based service learning. It's kids learning about a place, learning what's special about that place, and then designing projects or being advocates or actual voices in designing projects that are thoughtfully organized and meet the need of a local trail or a local community while also meeting their educational objectives. So the idea is that we're coming up with projects that kids are passionate about, kids can see are making a real difference when they go home and talk with them about their families around the dinner table in the evening. The families are excited about what the kids are doing and what they're learning. They're able to speak to groups of local officials and make the case about why the work that they're doing is important. It matters. And kids understand that what they're doing matters, and they learn better because of that. So that brings me to the next point. I wanted to talk about the goals of place-based service learning overall. We like to think of feeding 3 hungry birds with the same seed. And those 3 things that we're trying to accomplish, or the 3 birds that we're trying to feed, are student achievement, environmental quality, and community vitality. Teachers tend to think of the thing that their job as being focused on student achievement, and math skills, language arts skills, that kind of thing. But what we're looking at is the whole broader realm of what student achievement means: stewardship behavior, problem solving skills, lifelong learning skills, teamwork skills, and then even more than that, trying to build in students a lifelong commitment to volunteering for their community and to stewarding the trails and public lands that we all care so much about. What we've learned is that stewardship behavior it's a learned behavior. And you learn it by starting young and doing small projects and repeating those small projects in increasingly complex ways, so that it becomes almost an upward spiral that allows kids to become the kinds of citizens that we're hoping for. So then environmental quality, you might think, oh my gosh, teachers have got so much on their plates right now, and we're also asking them to save the environment. It seems like a lot to ask, but what we found is that when you begin to address real environmental issues, like creating a healthy local environment, having minimal impact on the global environment, clean air, clean water, healthy soil, all that kind of thing, meeting those real needs inspires kids to learn better, so that teachers can accomplish their educational goals better when they're focusing on real issues in the community. And lastly, community vitality. Again, that feels like a lot when we're of what we're hoping schools to accomplish. But what we found is that strong social capital, the idea that I care about you and you care about me, and despite any polarization that we might have around our political views, we're from the same place and we're going to work together to make this place better, this trail stronger, this public land more accessible and cleaner. That kind of community vitality comes from community-based projects like this. So when kids are working together with adults in the community, they're able to accomplish these goals, and you end up with these strong, vibrant community partnerships with municipal government, with trail maintaining clubs, with community organizations that create a sense of we're all in it together, that helps kids grow up to become strong citizens, but also helps the community to be stronger and the environment to be stronger. So it's really a 3-way win that we've seen come to fruition again and again and again in really exciting ways. So I'm ready for the next slide here. I wanted to talk about the 6 principles that we've defined for place-based service learning. You know, we started out with 11, and then we changed it to 5, and then we've worked with a whole group of people collaborating together, and we've landed on these 6, and they feel pretty solid to us right now, with the possible addition of a 7th around that I'll talk about at the end. But so the first one is grounded in place. In this principle focuses on the idea that the projects make sense in terms of the local environment, the local culture. So the learning and the projects that kids are engaged in are grounded in the actual values of the local residents, the natural landscape, the cultural heritage resources, the social dynamics, political systems, economic systems. In all of those ways, the work that students are doing, the learning that they're doing, the projects that they're carrying forth are resonate with the local community. So for example, in my small rural town in Vermont, the kinds of projects that kids are working on will be really different from the kids I was working with in an urban area in the center of a city. So they and what's appropriate, what people consider appropriate for kids to focus on is different, and the needs are different. So the idea is that though we're learning skills that apply throughout our lives and anywhere we move to in such a mobile society, we're specifically working on examples that are grounded in the place where we are and that will have community support. And that's why trails can be so perfect for this, because trails tend to have broad community support, and they tend to have sort of an endless amount of needs for energy and stewardship. So looking at the second principle, thank you, it is the idea that the projects that the students involved in are real. So they're not looking at orange goop coming out of a textbook somewhere in New Jersey or whatever. They're looking at real needs that have been identified often by students, students consulting with their parents about what matters in our community, and they're working together with people in the community to address those real needs. So, for example, if there's a need for in this first picture, you can see that a bear aware program, then kids are going to make people aware of bear safety issues. Or another example would be a trail that's become between the village and the neighborhood that's become overused and isn't being well maintained. That's something that kids can identify and can help to authentically make better. Drawing on math skills, drawing on language arts skills, drawing on all of the skills as they go about addressing those issues. It can be anything from ecological health to social justice, cultural vibrancy, economic vitality. A lot of kids do create treasure hunts called quests that actually help grow the economy of a particular area as well. So lots of real examples. And the third point is that the work is empowering to the youth. So when youth are just window dressing, when students are, we're saying, oh, now we're going to have all the kids go out and, carry around these matching bags and pick up litter, and the kids don't even know how the litter got there, and they're not weighing and evaluating what kinds of litter they're picking up, or they're not thinking about campaigns to stop more litter from getting put out there, then they don't have any sense of this being their own project. So in empowerment, students get a real sense of their own agency and their own personal sense of efficacy in addressing these real problems that have been identified that are grounded in the place where they come from. So students' opinions matter, and they'll join teachers and community partners in playing a meaningful role in decision-making, project planning, implementation, evaluation. It doesn't mean that the kids are going to necessarily make every decision in a project, but they will make age-appropriate decisions, and where they really can have an authentic voice. So, for example, if the teacher might work with a community, in my first example there, the photographing grounded in place, that someone will say, we've got a bear problem. The bears are raiding all of our garbage cans. What can we do about that? And the kids could choose to, yes, we'll take that on as a class. And then they might decide, do we want to do podcasts? Do we want to do radio PSAs? Do we want to put together posters? Do we want to, they'll have a voice and a choice in deciding which approach they want to take that they think is going to make the most difference in their community. And they might get their parents' opinions and things in that as well. The other part about empowering is that they're building agency because their learning is following their own curiosities and their own passions, so that they're helping to drive where this goes in a way that makes them feel in charge of their own learning and builds lifelong learning skills. And then the next point I wanted to talk about, thank you, is that projects are collaborative. And by collaborative, we mean that these aren't just school projects. They are school community projects. So they're projects that are done in partnership, and it's a multi-directional partnership. So it benefits the students' learning. It also benefits the partner. So if it's, for example, a trail maintaining club, it's great that they want to help the kids, but hopefully they're going to get some student power, some new ideas, some access to youthful audiences that will benefit the club as well. So the collaboration, it builds authentic relationships that benefit both sides. They also can cultivate cultural competency on the part of the students. As we all learn to work in the world that we live in, we need to be able to develop our skills at talking with a whole range of different kinds of people. And as students go out and develop authentic community partnerships and relationships, they understand how to speak respectfully to a whole range of people, which is another lifelong learning skill. And it also means that they are building in their own talents for, drawing in the talents of people who might not be involved in the project otherwise. And the next principle is integration. And this is just about that the learning in these place-based service learning projects is multidisciplinary. So as I said before, you might be learning, for example, on a trail, if you're eradicating endangered species, or I'm sorry, if you're, what's the word I'm looking for? Not endangered, invasive species. So if you're eradicating invasive species on a trail, you would want to do some math about that. You'd want to do some biology. You'd want to learn research skills. You'd want to learn how to write a brochure and print it out. So so it's learning across all the disciplines, and it's not siloed. The teachers are often working together. The science teacher might be working with the language arts teacher, co-planning and co-teaching the curriculum. It often involves other people in the school, the maintenance staff or the cafeteria staff, who might be coming together and helping to shape the project. So it's taking place across multiple disciplines, and it's also incorporating reflection into the direct process. So it has all the stages of learning, from planning to learning, to integration of learning and reflection on the learning. And lastly, the last principle is around rigor. That all this stuff sounds great. We've got kids out in the woods with clippers or writing brochures or speaking on podcasts, and it's all sounds wonderful, but it only matters if it's academically rigorous. It has to advance the student learning toward relevant standards. So the experiences need to at work on systems thinking or enduring understanding, and the particular content areas that are age appropriate for that group of students. And obviously they need to be aligned with state and national learning standards as well. So we call these aspirational principles because not every project, not every classroom is able to pull all of these principles in, but we aspire to them. And the best examples of place-based service learning at least touch on all 6 of these principles. Thanks. So the next one is we wanted to talk a little bit about what iTREC offers teachers, and Judy touched on some of this already. They're getting high quality professional development. Again and again, our evaluations show that teachers will almost routinely comment that it's the best professional development they've ever had. They're so engaged in it. They've learned so much. They've been able to apply it directly. They've got a lot of ideas for where they want to go. So it's a high quality professional development. They have access to resources, including trail managers, scientists, all those kinds of people. And they're getting this build in some community support. We tend to do speed dating with all of the various partners so that they can have a chance to meet the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service or the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance or NOLS or other organizations and begin to think about how they might want to partner with those organizations in the future. They also are getting strong connections to their own community. They're learning how to build partnerships in their own community. They're getting 6 graduate credits, as Judy mentioned, and all of this is spread in a year-long program. So they've got a week in the summer, 3 days in the fall, 3 days in the spring. So there's time in between during which they have access to all of the iTREC staff to noodle on what kind of project might make most sense for them, what they might like to do, what kind of application and resources they might need in order to do it. And so that by the end of a whole year-long program, they feel pretty ready to take this on. And here's what they have to commit. In order to get all that, they've got to commit to designing and implementing a place-based service learning project. They don't need to commit it during the year of the training. They can if they want to, or they might practice parts of it during the training, but they do need to commit to that, at least in the following year, they'll set something in motion so that there'll be a project that's benefiting the Iditarod Trail, that's benefiting the communities that the Iditarod Trail runs through, that's benefiting really the state of Alaska in terms of the learning, and that will be shared with other teachers as well. And then they need to document and share those successes. They sometimes do it through social media. We have a Facebook page, and we encourage them to share ideas with one another to raise up the whole, raise all boats of all the teaching of teachers in Alaska, as well as to trying to get local media coverage for the work they're doing. And we actually train them in how to work with the media so that the good news of all the work that they're doing with students can get put out there. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about some of the things that we've found have worked well in moving this forward. We've used to focus very much on teachers doing one project. And what we've been doing lately is saying, instead of, if you want to do one project, that's great. We also, though, want you to shift your whole teacher practice. We'd like you to based on those 6 aspirational principles, see if you can partner more with the community. See if you can give your youth more voice. See if you can ground your teaching more in place. See if you can get kids outside more. So we're looking for a shift in teacher practice. And then we've also found it's been really successful to bring in alumni as instructors so that teachers are not just hearing from agency folks and other partners, they're hearing from real Alaskan teachers who can talk about their experiences and how it's worked for them. They can ask questions and that kind of thing. We find that travel is a big incentive. We cover their travel costs, and that's for some teachers, they've never been up to Nome, for example, or even down to Stewards. So the chance to visit other parts of the state is a big excitement. For rural teachers, coming into Anchorage, where they can maybe take care of a few appointments and that kind of thing on the side, is a big incentive. So in a state as big as Alaska, covering travel costs has been really helpful. We do encourage carpooling and that kind of thing for the parts that are on the road system. We don't charge a registration fee. and we feel as though that makes this make more sense for teachers, although we do, if they want to get graduate credit, they have to pay for that themselves, but we've arranged a pretty moderate cost through the University of Alaska in Anchorage. And then most of the costs are covered. We're providing them with meals, or a stipend for meals, and the meals shift in their, sometimes they're coming out of totes with, bags of bread and packages of sandwich meat, and other times they're eating out in restaurants. It depends on where we are. But most of their costs and their materials are also covered. So those have all worked really well for us. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about where the Iditarod Trail to Every Classroom program sits nationally. It's part of a whole sisterhood of every classroom programs that include, as Judy mentioned, the Trail to Every Classroom program that the Appalachian Trail does. That came from a program called Forest for Every Classroom, FEC, which was started originally by 2 nonprofits and 2 federal agencies in the states of Vermont and New Hampshire. So a small nonprofit and a national nonprofit went together with the Park Service and the Forest Service, created Forest for Every Classroom. That's now happening every year in Georgia. It's been in Montana, it's been in Texas, it's been sort of all over the places in addition to Vermont and New Hampshire. That grew into Trail to Every Classroom, Iditarod Trail for Every Classroom. The Park for Every Classroom program also is part of this group, and that has been based for the last 11 years in the Northeast region of the National Park Service. But this year we're going national. We've got 8 new parks that are involved, from Hawaii Volcano to Crater Lake to Cuyahoga to Cesar Chavez and Everglades, Smokies, all over the country that are involved. And the thing that holds these programs together is these principles. Everybody's working with the same 6 principles and the same idea of place-based service learning, even though some of them are more directly doing teacher professional development, and some of them are training Park Service people who will then go out and train teachers. So, but it's in the same circle. And I mentioned a possible 7th principle that's been emerging in the work we've been doing with PEC National, and that's equity, and just trying to make sure that we're considering diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in everything we do. So that is what it looks like, and I'm gonna turn this over for you to hear what some of the challenges have been.
Thanks so much, Delia. That was fantastic. You did a great overview of iTREC and place-based service learning. So I just wanted to take a few minutes. Both Delia and Judy have explained what an amazing, fantastic program that we've got going here. And it's not without its challenges, for certain. So I just wanted to touch on those really briefly and kind of share some of the ways that, we've been trying to work through some of those challenges. So the first one, and Delia touched on it, Alaska's big. It just is, right? We're more than twice the size of the state of Texas. And then the image here shows roughly the Iditarod National Historic Trail. And the historic trail is over 2,500 miles of the trail and connector trails, and connecting both rural and urban communities. So it's big. We're covering a large area. In addition to that, Alaska is remote. There aren't a whole lot of roads in Alaska. There's only 20% of Alaska is accessible by roads, which means if you're not on the road system, you have to fly pretty much. And so, especially our educators in northern communities requires air travel. And this photo here is from Nome, and some of our northern communities have commercial air travel, like you see here with a big jet, but a lot of those are serviced by local regional air carriers and charter jets, so even smaller. And so it kind of poses 2 big challenges for us. Number one is funding, and I think both Delia and Judy touched on that. it can be really expensive. So we do try to cover as many costs as possible for our participants so that they're able to participate in the program. And so those big ones are obviously transportation and lodging for that. And then the second challenge that this poses is in recruitment, especially in some of our very rural areas. Teacher retention, is pretty low, and so you have a high turnover rate of teachers. But and we've looked at that, and even though we know that if we train a teacher in place-based service learning, they go through the whole iTREC program. If they don't stay in that community, they may move to another community within the state of Alaska, which is still value add, or, wherever they go, they're going to take that experience and that background with them. So it's still a win, very much so, but it does pose a challenge for recruitment, especially when we're trying to, make longer connections within a community and be able to kind of grow. We like to say that, we're trying to go deep into schools so that it becomes kind of a whole school experience there. So another challenge, that we face sometimes is agency support. And Judy gave us a nice overview of the beginnings of iTREC and all of the great leadership that came together, and said, this is a really good thing and we want to see this succeed. People come and go within our agencies, and so leadership changes over, and where sometimes you have a leader who is a very strong supporter of our program, and then someone else comes in and they're like, I'm not really sure what this is, and so sometimes it takes a lot more effort or lead time to get everybody on board, and hopefully they see the value add that iTREC brings to all of our entities, and also helping them to understand that this isn't an add-on or a one-off, but it's really integral to our overall educational program within our organizations. A third challenge that we look at is staffing capacity. Certainly within our agencies themselves, we're always faced with capacity, but also with our partner, the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance. That is an all-volunteer organization. So these folks are giving of their own personal time to make iTREC a success. And let me tell you, they've given a lot of time to that to make sure that it has been successful. So another challenge is maintaining motivation. And, just like I was talking about agency and staffing capacity, same thing, obviously, with our teachers. Wow, they've got a lot that is piled on them. And as Delia mentioned, we get a lot of great feedback from our educators that go through the program. They are hyped, when they come out of it, they're pumped and they're ready to hit the ground running. When they go back to their school, then reality sets in, right? And there's all of these other layers that land on top of them when they get back into the school year. And sometimes we're able to get a group, and we encourage teachers to apply at least in pairs or even more within a school, so that when they go back to their school, they have a support network. Sometimes we get single teachers and they go back to their school and they're the lone ranger there, and they don't have that much support. But it's a challenge that we recognize, and one of the other great benefits of the iTREC program is building this network of educators within the state. So even if they don't have a partner at their school that went through the iTREC program, they went through that program with a whole host of other educators, and they know that all of those educators are out there to support them. And so we continuously try to keep building that network for them, so they know that there's the support that's there. And, with them too, with their own administration within the school, we try to do our part to help to make sure that their school principals, superintendents are aware of the program and the value add that it brings to the school, to the community, to partners as well. So one of the things that we've done, besides just kind of, continuing to build those networks is to offer alumni programming too. And that's the photo that you see here, some of our alumni that we were able to bring together. And it's just, you can feel the energy in the room when those teachers get back together. You know, it's just, it's pretty uplifting. So, which has been great. And then of course, what we've all been dealing with these past couple of years is COVID. COVID hit in 2020. It was kind of right in the middle of our iTREC program. We had 2 great face-to-face workshops that year. And we were just coming into the spring workshop when COVID hit and, you know, threw all of our plans out the window. So we had to change gears in how we delivered our program. And that has subsequently rolled over into the last couple of years too, to go to a virtual programming. Certainly not ideal, I mean, but, you know, because so much of iTREC are those personal connections, those personal interactions, but we've been able to maintain and continue through the pandemic in this virtual world. So again, kind of adapt to what's thrown at us. But challenges, sure, you know, we all face them every day, but we've got this whole group of folks here on the screen have been wonderful to work with and great problem solvers. So that is where I'm going to leave it with the challenges, and I'm going to hand it over to Louisa, who gets to talk about all the really, really fun stuff, which are all the successes from the iTREC program. So Louisa, I will run the slides for you, but it's
okay. Thanks, Annette. Yeah, I drew the lucky straw of getting to share all the happy news. So one of the most profound successes that iTREC has achieved, and it comes through in that change in teacher practice that Delia mentioned earlier, is a change of teachers getting their kids outside. Teachers in the program take their students outside to sharpen their observational skills, to help them learn more about the nature in their own backyards, to build language skills, to understand math concepts such as geometric shapes, like you can see them making out of twigs here, also social studies and science concepts. And by getting their kids outside, they are making learning more fun and engaging, just as Delia described earlier in going over the principles of place-based service learning. They've also been directly and powerfully connecting children to place. So getting outside the classroom to learn has also led teachers to form greater bonds with organizations and businesses in their communities, forming alliances to get work done and helping students better understand their own communities. And here, students are visiting an archaeological dig site to learn more about the ongoing work there and better understand the history of their own community. And in the next picture, we can see a group of students who have taken a trip to the local recycling facility so they can better understand how waste is handled in their community. And, you know, both of these field trips are tied to the learning that surrounds their interest in, you know, like a recycling program at school, or you know, it's something to raise community awareness about the history of where they are. Thanks, Annette. So in addition to connecting students to where they live, iTREC has forged a deeper understanding of and connection to the Iditarod National Historic Trail. Teachers who never taught about the trail and maybe had only limited knowledge of the trail now use it as a connecting thread to many other topics, to other communities, and to Alaska history. And many even take their students on field trips to the Iditarod National Historic Trail. You can see some kids going out snowshoeing here. And some have their students become experts about the Iditarod National Historic Trail and teach others. And this is art actually from a student presentation of older students presenting to younger students in the school about the trail. So they got to teach what they themselves had learned. Annette touched on this idea of changing the culture of schools by having multiple teachers go through the program. And Girdwood Pre-K 8 elementary school in Girdwood, Alaska, which is a community south of Anchorage. Over the years of the iTREC program, virtually all of the teachers who teach there in the school have gone through the iTREC program. And similarly, many of the teachers at Mokatons Elementary School in Wasilla, which is north of Anchorage, have gone through the iTREC program, and so has the principal. And just as an aside, she was so impressed by the iTREC program that she does consider, if a teacher applies and they've been through it, that's a hiring bonus. And having so many teachers in one school trained through the program, like Annette was talking about, it fosters a more deliberate and meaningful fosters more meaningful and deliberate collaborations between classes across the school, gives all the teachers, they're not just the lone ranger in their school, but they've got this whole community right there, all working towards engaging kids in outdoor learning projects, community-based, place-based learning. So it makes a big difference. Over the past 10 years, iTREC teachers and students have effected some monumental changes in the world around them. And I wanted to end just by touching on a few of these projects. So preschoolers learned about the skills that scientists use: careful observation, asking questions, and sharing their findings with others. And then they practiced these skills themselves over and over, and they wrote a book that captured their activity and shared this approach to learning with others. And that, they had the achievement of what they had done in their schoolyard, and then they also published it in a book to share with others. Kindergarteners in another school learned about Alaska animals that live in a nearby wetland, and they created art, which you can see here on the right, to represent those animals. They worked with the local native village of Aklutna to find out the Dena'ina names of the creatures, of those creatures. And then they worked with the Nature Conservancy to create signs along the boardwalk in the wetland to share the names and other information that they'd learned about the animals with others. Several classes in the Anchorage area have created permanent outdoor learning spaces on their school grounds or in nearby parks. And I think it was Delia who mentioned that the alumni have become instructors at iTREC workshops. I think this is one of the things that past iTREC teachers have inspired current teachers in the program to take on. We have this kind of recurring idea of creating these outdoor learning spaces. These outdoor classrooms can be used by any classes in the schools, not just the class that helped create it. And all of them have been designed with location in mind, from these low profile adaptable spaces like we just saw in Russian Jack Park, to an outdoor classroom that is highly reflective of the Japanese immersion program students who created it. And know that students have been, were involved in all the steps in the process to create these. They worked with landscape architects, with park officials, and more to select locations, create the designs, and then to install these outdoor learning spaces. Even there when the big rocks were delivered. Students in multiple locations have also gotten involved in environmental monitoring work, including stream monitoring work. And that work, even led fifth graders at one school to become champions, real champions of their creek. They constructed the history of their creek through community research and interviews with people. They conducted creek cleanups. They hosted a town forum about the creek, got officials to rename the creek, changing it from Fish Ditch to Scheffler Creek, and got their stream included in a list of protected anadromous streams in their region. They also shared what they learned about the stream and the ecology of salmon with their wider community through an interpretive sign that they installed near the stream. So these were just some of the things iTREC teachers and their students have accomplished in the past 10 years. Wherever they are and whatever they've done, all the students led by teachers who've been through the iTREC program have had the experience, that empowering experience Delia talked about, of identifying challenges in their community and then changing their world for the better. And that's a legacy that we are thrilled to know they'll carry with them always. So thanks from all of us.
It was wonderful. Thank you all so much. Yeah, any attendees on the call today, if you have any questions or comments for the presenters, please feel free to put those in the chat. Yeah, and we do have a bit of a smaller group. We've got a couple minutes left too, so I will allow you to take yourself off mute if you would like to ask a question verbally. You are welcome to do that.
I have a question. We were just curious, how many of the people joining on the call today have some kind of educational program as part of their national trail? I know that the Appalachian Trail does. I know we've met before with the folks in the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail, but I'm not sure that they've started education programs. I kind of think not. So I'm just curious if that's what's been anybody on the call's experience with doing education in the past.
Yeah, please feel free to put your answer about that in the chat.
I can also comment that I'm part of the World Trails Network, and it's interesting that a number of places, Jordan and some others have. Ellen, do you mind telling us about the Washington Rochambeau education program? Not to put you on the spot, but.
We received a grant from the National Park Foundation through their Open Outdoors for Kids program. And I think perhaps my partner in that project, Randy Flood, I don't know if he's still able to be on the call or not, but it's place-based. It sprang up during COVID. It asks us to look at both, I guess, both at the actual outdoor learning aspect and also at what can be done in virtual programming. And it's really a great program because it really says, begins by asking you to question and to divest yourself of the, if we create the program, is it good? It's based on a survey that we did of teachers. We started in the Virginia area. So we went to the teachers and said, what do you need to teach about this trail and to teach about the American Revolution? And I could go on, but that is the beginning. We're also working, and I know they're on the call, we're collaborating with the Values Through History program, which has a whole range of teacher activities and really an entire curriculum that was and books that have been published. And we're working with them because they too do the same thing that you all do in terms of multidisciplinary approach, getting all the teachers involved. And I could talk for hours, but I'll stop there.
Thanks a lot. How about at Lewis and Clark? it's wonderful that it sounds as though you were able to transition a successful program and now starting a new one. What do you imagine for this new program?
Hi, everyone. Caitlin Campbell here from Lewis and Clark Trail. We're really just kind of at the beginning of envisioning what the future of education looks like for the Lewis and Clark Trail. And our education, the head of education for the trail is actually on paternity leave. So too bad he couldn't see this, but we'll have to tell him about some of what we've learned today. But yeah, we're really in the brainstorming stage of just envisioning what could be next for us.
Well, that's exciting. There's a question here about the average cost spent by the Alliance and partners per teacher for a year's training. So I'm going to turn that one over to you, Annette and Judy. And I don't know if you need a minute to think about it. We could hear about the North Country Trail in the meantime. But Annette and Judy.
Yeah, I think I'll hand that to Judy, since the Alliance handles most of the cost there. I'm not 100% certain what it is per teacher. Judy, do you have an idea on that one? And I think it would probably vary too, depending on, if we're talking about a teacher from a rural community in Alaska, the costs are going to be higher because you'll have air travel coming to each one of the sessions. If we're talking about a teacher from more urban community, costs will be a lot less because they can drive to 2 out of the 3 of the workshops. So I don't know. Did we lose Judy? I'm not quite sure. I can't see her.
Judy, are you still here? Maybe she might have fallen off.
No, I'm just trying to get off mute.
Oh, okay.
It would, it does vary if they're on the road system or if they're a rural a teacher from the rural areas, because you have to fly them in and out for that. So it's about $3,000 to $4,000 for a rural teacher, because you have to get them to Anchorage or to Nome, and it's about maybe $1,000 to $1,500 for the other teachers, just the base airfare and lodging and food costs. And that is not factoring in the cost of the agencies, contributing their time and resources, but just the hard cost for the teachers, the travel and the logistics for each teacher.
I think I'm the only, most people are doing it through their agency time other than me as a consultant. So I think that probably helps keep the costs down too. Yeah. Good. I think we're out of time. Jane, did you want to speak briefly about the North Country Trail program?
I just, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we just did, it was about 4 summers where we took 3rd and 4th graders and took them on the trail, and they had cameras, and then they took pictures for like a week. And we did different hikes on different sections of trails. And then an adult picked their best picture and made it into a canvas. And then there was a showing in the community. It was very successful, but it took a lot of time, I guess. And most of the people were volunteers. And we had someone that was in charge, but that was kind of like a grant, and that person did it for like 2-3 weeks and then was done. So
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Cool. Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for coming today. It's been really wonderful being with you. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone for attending, and to our wonderful presenters, Judy, Annette, Louisa, Delia. Yeah, if you have any additional questions for the presenters, please feel free to reach out with the contact information on the screen, and you will receive a copy of this recording as well. And just have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.